Hey, what's going on? Thursday, January the 2nd, 2025. Dan Brouthers, Hall of Fame. 342 career batting average. This video is a recap of his career. And I want to rank him among the greatest hitters in the old school era of 1870 through 1900. That period, and that's when he played, 1880s, 1890s. Who is the best hitter of that era? Not after 1900. We know Ty Cobb and Roger Hornsby and Joe Jackson have higher batting averages. Ted Williams, Ed Delante, these guys have higher batting averages than Dan Brouthers. But how about before 1900? Can we make the proclamation that Dan Brouthers was the best hitter between 1870 and 1900? I'm going to look at it. All right, Dan, he played, like I said, 18 years, 1879 to 1896. So that is old school. He had 1,676 games, 6,726 at-bats, 1,529 runs scored. That's a good number for 1,676 games. Almost a run scored per game played. Pretty close. How many times did he go over 100 runs scored in the season? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. One of those seasons, 153 runs scored. And that was only in 123 games. Just think if he had played 154 games, he'd have 30 more. He would have been in the 180s runs scored. He also had a high of 139 and 137. So his runs scored was excellent. Hits. This is key. Career hits, 2,303 in 1,676 games. That's a ratio of 1.37 hits per game played. That's top 5 all time. The record holder, as far as ratio of hits per game played, Ed Delante and Sam Thompson both had 1.41 hits per game played. Delante had like 1,837 games and he got 1,597 hits. Oh, no. Pardon me. From what I remember is he had close to 1,600 games, 1,500 plus games. He got 2,600 hits, almost. I think it was 2,590 something. Almost 1,600 games. No, almost 1,800 games. All right. Let me pull him up. Let's see. Ed Delante, okay? Let's put him up. Let's see what he did. I got him here. 2,597 hits. I was close. 2,600, almost 2,600 hits. And he did it in 1,837 games. Okay. 1,837 games. 2,597 hits. That's 1.41 hits per game played. A record. Number one. Him and Sam Thompson at the same ratio. Sam Thompson had less games. What do you think of that? So I like Dan Brouthers' ratio, 1.37. 462 doubles. 206 triples. 107 homers. Back then, the fences were too far. You couldn't hit it out of the park. You had to hit it over a guy's head and keep running. 1,301 RBIs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons over 100 RBIs. So he's not a home run guy, and he's not an RBI guy, really. As far as hits, he never had 200 hits in a season. His high was 197. Okay. 257 stolen bases. Pretty good. 840 walks. Very good. Listen to this stat. I didn't know this stat. 6,726 at-bats, and he struck out 238 times. Very good. Some guys strike out over 200 times in a season. A guy named Adam Dunn and Mark Reynolds both struck out 200 times in a season. And for an 18-year career, Dan Brouthers only struck out 238 times. Wow. One year for Dan Brouthers, he had 522 at-bats and struck out only 13 times. How about making contact? 342 average. But here's what's significant. He had 16 seasons in a row over 300 batting average. His high was 374. He also had a 373 and a 370. 3 seasons over 370. He had a 368. That could have been a fourth. He had a 359. He had a 350, and he had a 347 and a 344. That's how he arrived. With 16 seasons in a row over 300, that's how he arrived, 342 career batting average. Prolific. 423 on base. 520 slugging, that's good. If you're over 500, you're a slugger, even though he's not a home run guy. And he had 3,498 total bases. Okay, I want to evaluate something, and I want to rank him. Where does Dan Brouthers rank among the greatest hitters of all time pre-1900? Now, there are some pretty good hitters during that time. I've got the year by year here. Would you consider Dan Brouthers the number one hitter pre-1900? I do. I looked it up. He's number one. Greatest hitter pre-1900. 342 batting average. No one higher. What do I mean? Well, Levi Merrill, he was in the old school. You ever hear of Levi Merrill? His career batting average was 356, but a caveat, only 8 years. And he batted over 300 all 8 years. How about that? But it's only 1,400 at-bats. Dan Brouthers, 6,000 plus at-bats. So I'm not going to count Levi Merrill. How about Ross Barnes? He's old school. I'm talking about guys pre-1900. He had a 360 career batting average. Again, only 9 years. He had 2,000 at-bats. Not going to count him. Dan Brouthers has more at-bats and more hits. All right, Deacon White. Remember him? His career batting average, 312. No, can't count him. Who else you want to look at? Paul Hines, good hitter. You ever hear of him? Career batting average only 302, so can't look at him. Got George Gore, pre-1900 I'm talking about. 301, won't do it. How about Camp Hansen? He was old school. What was his career batting average? 334. Brouthers beats him, 342. Brothers had 18 years. Camp Hansen had 27 years. He had 10,000 at bats. Would you rank Camp Hansen a better hitter than Dan Brouthers? Camp Hansen had 3,435 hits, but he did it in 27 years. Dan Brouthers had 2,300 hits in 18 years. So the way I'm going to look at it is this. Camp Hansen had 9 more years and about 4,000 more at bats. Could Dan Brouthers have had more hits if he had played 9 years? Let's say he averages 180 hits a year, which he was on that pace if he plays a full season. That's 1,620 hits. That's what Dan Brouthers could have done in those 9 years. He had 2,300 hits. Give him 1,600 more, that's 3,900 hits. I think Dan Brouthers would have out-hit Camp Hansen if he had played the same number of games. So I've got Hansen maybe number 2. Dan Brouthers to me is still number 1. So who else would you consider during that era? You got Roger Connor. He's in the Hall of Fame. 316 career batting average. Nope. Another guy is King Kelly. Would you consider him better than Dan? 307 career batting average. See, Dan Brouthers, during that era, was the best hitter. You got Hugh Duffy and Billy Hamilton, but they played toward the 1890s and into the 1900s. I'm talking pre-1900. What do you think of my observation? I'm going to make this proclamation right now. Pre-1900, Dan Brouthers was the greatest hitter in that era, from 1870 to 1900. And that's why I went over his 18-year career, and that's why I have him on my YouTube channel. Curious guy, not a slugger, but a very, very good hitter. 16 years in a row over 300. 3 seasons over 370, had a 368, a couple of 350 seasons, and a 340s batting average season. Very good hitter. And the ratio of hits per game played. All right, what do you think? Who should we do next? Again, I like to go over guys who have high batting averages. So all the guys that I've been covering have high batting averages for their career. Who haven't I looked at? You know who again, I'll recap. Who have I looked at? On my YouTube channel, I have looked at Ty Cobb, Rogers Hornsby, Joe Jackson, Lefty O'Doul, Ed Delante, Tris Speaker, Billy Hamilton, Ted Williams, Dan Brouthers, Babe Ruth, Dave Orr, Harry Heilman, Willie Keeler, Bill Terry, Lou Gehrig, George Sisler, Jesse Burkett, Tony Gwynn, Paul Wainer, I covered him, and Stan Musial. Who's next? Again, I like to go with guys with high career batting averages. Have you heard of Pete Browning? 13-year career, 341 career batting average, and he is old school also, 1880s, 1890s. Let's look at him next, Pete Browning. And then we'll get to the other guys down the road. There's a lot of guys I'm going to cover. I like to look at their career, see how they performed. Okay? But for now, Pete Browning is next on my series of videos. I'm going to look at every season and evaluate him. Talk to you later. This was the Dan Brouthers recap. I'm out.